I just got back from Cali, Colombia, and their big entrepreneurial meeting, annual meeting, and I asked them the same questions I've asked in our domestic audiences, and that is, how many of you believe that the conditions under which your business exists today will be the same 3 years from now? Because we're all faced with constant change. You can have a new competitor in a nanosecond. You can, people are constantly changing their brands and brand messaging, and consumers are bombarded with messages. So they're in that stage of trying to cut through the clutter that they receive. Because I also asked people, how many of you, have more or less clutter in your life with the advent of the web? And everybody says more clutter by far. So it puts a lot of pressure on a business to, be able to access a consumer, cut through the clutter, and make sense of what you're trying to share with that consumer. It's become much more. It drives one really key thing among others, and that's the clarity of your brand messaging. It is really, really a different and dynamic time for that brand clarity, and because you've got to cut through that clutter just to get noticed. It's not just good enough to get them to your website. It's what happens at your website. The one thing that to do a much better job of in this constant change market, keeping close to your customers, understanding what's changing in their lives and how they look and feel differently. I had a client not too long ago that had lost one customer. It was a B2B company, marketing and advertising company. They lost one company that accounted for 65% of their revenues. And they said it was a surprise. And I said, well, shame on you. You should stay close to your customers enough to where you know that. And in the consumer market, you really have to understand your customers, their needs, wants, desires. You need to immerse yourself in, what they want, what their lifestyles are, and that kind of stuff. So your brand message relates to them. We do a great deal of brand mapping with our clients so that we understand our customers' lives, desires, and how we relate to them. Because one of the big shifts has been in the whole area of the consumer messaging and how they relate to your brand experience. The web gives you the opportunity to significantly change the brand experience, but you really have to immerse yourself in your customers and how you're going to relate to them as a brand. They want that brand experience. And I don't know of too many consumers that don't go check out a company before they do business with them, because they totally want to understand the brand. You really need to understand and know what your innovation paths are going to be. Because the innovation is the critical element of managing change. If you sit still long enough, things will change on you. So you want to get ahead of that innovation curve. And that requires an innovation culture where you literally are getting employees and those closest to the customers and the customers themselves involved in innovation processes where you want and you understand how you're going to be clearly different today and in the future. It's a constant part of the management process today. Innovation is a big key to responding to those changes that are going on around you. So it's more important than ever to build culture such that innovation almost becomes discretionary. The people will come forth with innovative ideas throughout the company if you foster that culture. And that's somewhat of a big switch for a lot of people. But don't let it scare you because you don't have a choice. Okay? You're going to innovate or die. You need to embrace change as a part of your management processes. And there are all sorts of things you can do to create innovation inside of your company. It's not something that occurs in the executive suite normally. It occurs down in taking hard looks at how things are changing and getting feedback and information from customers, prospective customers, and then figuring out how you're going to change your brand value position over time. All brands emote. So what is your brand promise and how are you connecting to your consumers? Absolutely connecting to them in a way that they say, oh, that is a brand I want to be associated with or look at further. There's 4 things that all brands must do. 1, they must disrupt. You're in this cluttered world, and we've all heard that the people spend 3 to 7 seconds on a website when they land there. Why is that so short? It's because they're not hearing or seeing what they were hunting for, or something, more importantly, something that they were interested in. So what's your disruption? What is your brand promise? And in fact, when I do an exercise with people about the brand promise, I want to know, what is the most outrageous claim you can make about your brand? What is that disruptor? Because part 1, after you disrupt, then they're going to engage in your website. Too many people put a whole bunch of information on their website, lots of pull-down menus, products, services, about us, home, all of that kind of stuff. Those are loser websites in today's world. Give them disruption. Your landing page has to give them disruption. But that's the next step. Disrupt before you can engage. Once you disrupt, they can engage. They'll look at your pull-down menus. They'll better understand a lot more about your products and services. They're willing to go through and look because you've given them a disruptive, clearly different brand position. And if it isn't disruptive, work harder at it. Go find some alliance partners, somebody to work with you on that disruption. Work with your employees and your customers. But make sure that you've got that disruption, which leads to engagement. And then the third piece of it is an offer. You cannot, and this is, your website should follow this pattern. Disrupt, engage, offer, then you can close. Too many people go straight to the close. And they don't really give that consumer that emotional connection, which comes through your brand promise, your brand value. And another key point to websites is brand language. I work with a lot of companies across many different industries. And one of the first things I do is I go pull up their competitors and look at their language. Lo and behold, oftentimes the language of my clients sounds exactly like the language of the competitors. And therefore you get this overwhelming sense of, well, there's no difference, I'm moving on. That's that 3 to 7 seconds. They don't get it. Too many people don't pay enough attention to what's that emotional experience. What's the buzzword on the web world is the UX, UI, user experience, user interface. How are we doing that? And every piece of your organization, from answering the telephone to live to website-based stuff, what is that brand experience and how are they experiencing that? It's critically important to cut through that clutter. And then that migrates over time as you change your value position and that kind of stuff. In fact, most companies' survival out beyond 3 to 5 years depends on your ability to innovate, to immerse in the opportunity to build a better value position for your company. Profits are like breathing. Without them, we cease to exist. But understand the origin of profits. Margins come from satisfied customers that we've created a really high value for. Okay? And the key to that value creation is segmenting your customers. I've said this many a times. I love to tell this story. I had a client once and I said, who's your target market? And his response was El Mundo, which if you don't know is Spanish for the world. I said, great, interesting. I've got a salesperson sitting out in the lobby. Where do I send them first and why? Ask your question. And the reason segmentation is so important, the tighter I segment, the easier it becomes for me to create value. If I'm trying to create value for different segments, especially if you're an early stage company, it's almost impossible. You're going to water down your offering, your experience, and everything else. Tight focus from a segmentation standpoint is critical. Profits will make you stupid. A lot of companies in this country, in fact, some that are shuttering their doors now, we're lulled to the sense, well, people are buying. We're expanding. We're growing. We're opening more stores. We're good. We pat ourselves on the back and say the profits indicate we're good. We keep going. And in fact, I will contend that this whole world will be an opportunistic and change. When your profits are great, it certainly is not time to abandon those strategies, but it's certainly the best time to start looking for the next strategies, the next value positions, how you add on and create additional value for what you already have. And guys, candidly, the other rule about running a business and the most valued lessons, none of that works without an engaged team, without engaged culture and leadership, and that they're involved in the planning process. Okay, now that doesn't mean we're going to have everybody in the company tied up doing planning, but we give them portals to where they can give opinions. They get invited to internal web meetings where they can talk about their opinions, things that we can and need to do better. Because there's two sides to great strategy, and that's driving value up over time and cost down. In other words, increasing your competency, your value to the customer, and driving cost out over time. Because ideally, if you can drive out cost and increase the value at the same time, you're fending off a lot of competition and your margins will be better. Margins have somewhat of a direct correlation to the value that you create. And that value today takes on a whole different flavor because of the experience, the brand experience. You have another phenom driving you today, and that's the employment side of things. Okay? The employees today want that job experience. It's a lot to do with your purpose. What do you stand for? Am I showing up every day and a part of a great culture, a great company that I can be proud to, what we call ride for the brand? Can I ride for this company? Can I defend it when I'm out socially and somebody attacks the company? Are my employees, my associates, dedicated to that brand and their role in fulfilling it? You know, we used to give people job descriptions. They're necessary because we have to be clear about the functionality that creates the products and services we put out in an efficient manner. But at the same time, there are people today in that job experience, they want to be a part of something bigger. They want to understand their role in fulfilling the brand promise that we put out there. And it's amazing as we do that with clients, how much it changes, one, the innovation, the cooperation, the collaboration, because we're all on the same page about the vision, the values, the basic purpose of the company beyond making a buck, because people want to know what those purposes are. That doesn't mean you have to set up a charity or a foundation or something like that, but how are you giving back, making a greater purpose for your company other than just making dollars? It makes a huge difference in the companies. We all read a list in most of our cities about best companies to go to work for. You usually find those companies are also among the most profitable.